Hi, my name is Dr. Rob Ward. I want to welcome you to the RedoxDoc.com video class series. Today's topic is the flu, and this is a seasonal problem, and we are in that season right now. So what I want to focus on is how we might be able to build our defenses at a molecular level, a little deeper than the usual way in which we think about the flu. We think about getting a flu shot, or we might run to the doctor when we might have the flu for help. But what if we could work deeper in our physiology to help our bodies and do something to strengthen our defenses? So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. The seasonal flu is the type A flu, and it would be characterized by three main viral types: the H1N1, H1N2, and H3N2. That may be more information than you care about, but just so you know. The flu comes about in the fall and winter, and nobody really knows why, but it has probably to do with the fact that we are indoors around one another more, and our body's a little more stressed with cold environments in our part of the hemisphere. But if you look through time, there have been times when there have been serious outbreaks of certain strains of the flu. And the most notorious was in 1917, 1918, during the First World War. It was called the Spanish flu. And the fascinating thing about this flu is it just decimated the world. It spread worldwide, even in Alaska, very remote areas. But probably somewhere around 5% of the Earth's population was killed. That represented somewhere between 75 and 100 million people. Records weren't very good in those days. But the curious thing is we think of the flu being more of a problem for people who are older and have health problems, or maybe the very young. But in this case, the very strong were the most susceptible. So healthy young men, especially soldiers who were in top physical condition, often were the ones who got the flu the worst, and their bodies were decimated. And the belief looking backwards is that there was a hyperimmune response that caused such release of chemicals and cytokines that the body was just flooded with chemicals that overwhelmed our body's ability to fight. So the very strong were very vulnerable. So most of the time our flu is not like that particular virus. It's a little different. And so, the symptoms of the flu would be runny nose, sore throat, fevers that are quite high, maybe 103, and go up and down with Tylenol or something like that, chills, cough, and we get in bed. It's called prostrate. We're flat. We can't get up and go. That's how we know we have the flu. So treatment in the medical world revolves around two medications. One of them is called amantadine. It's no longer used because the flu viruses have developed resistance to it, and it's now really out of favor. There's no point in even prescribing it. Tamiflu is another drug that's very expensive, pretty effective if you get it started in the first 48 hours. It stops the virus from replicating. It can help, but you have to get on it right away. The flu shot, which is really kind of a novel idea of taking a vaccine that contains a dead virus, and what it does is it provokes our body just to make antibodies. So we have a bloodstream that is full of antibodies that are floating around. Our immune system is provoked to make those. It doesn't make us stronger. It just means those antibodies are there to help recognize the virus being in our system. That's the key, to have an antibody to recognize that there's a problem. So the flu shot is okay for children over 6 months, and really anybody, because it's a dead virus. You're not going to get the flu from a flu shot. It can make you feel kind of icky because it's challenging your immune system to make these little antibodies, but you can't actually get infected from the flu shot. The effectiveness of the flu shot varies from year to year. And the reason is the strains that are put into the shot to provoke the certain antibodies of those strains vary from year to year. And the CDC kind of guesses on what's out there based on our best estimates, not always right. And so the shot can vary in effectiveness, but it can be helpful. And as far as safety goes, it is safe, but it's not cheap. And most importantly, it's not making you healthier. It's simply making you make antibodies. What your body does with those antibodies, well, that varies from person to person according to your health. So I want to talk a little bit about some science to help us then think about how to get underneath of this challenge of really being able to get the most value out of your flu shot, or maybe if you don't like the idea of flu shots, to have to strengthen your system so that you can build up your own resistance, okay? So the first study that caught my eye was the study in the Free Radical Biology Journal from back in 2003. And what they did is they did some tissue cultures with human cells, and they used mice to do some in vivo studies to look at the effect on epithelial tissues in the body. Now, the epithelium would be the lining of our nose, the lining of our lung, where the virus likes to get its foot in the door. That's how it gets in your body. We spread the flu from person to person through air droplets from sneezing and coughing and so forth. So the epithelial tissue that has a lower glutathione levels has a greater susceptibility to the flu. And what does glutathione levels have to do with that? Well, they postulated several ideas and theories, but we know that this powerful antioxidant is present in our tissues when our cells are vibrantly healthy. And glutathione is manufactured by the nucleus. It doesn't come from food directly, but we have to make it inside our cells. And the nucleus will manufacture glutathione when it is told to. It's told to by certain transcription factors. Those transcription factors are provoked when we have a good redox balance in our body. And we'll get to what that amounts to in just a second. What is redox balance? The next study was done in 2013 in the Journal of Molecular Science. They reported this. And they were looking at another way to sort of see how the flu is more susceptible in some than others. And they looked at pollutants. And they used cadmium, which is a toxin that we can find in our environment pretty much everywhere. It is a byproduct of the chemical manufacturing world. And it's a heavy metal that shows up and causes trouble in our bodies if we have a lot of exposure. Fortunately, we don't get a lot, okay? But in cells that had exposure to cadmium that they studied, when the flu virus came into those cells, it had the ability of replicating itself more easily. And the question is, well, why? And as they looked closely at what was going on in these cells, they discovered that cadmium, this toxin, was inducing oxidative stress, disturbing the redox balance. Redox is a word that reflects the concept of oxidation and reduction. There has to be balance. So the oxidative stress means there was a buildup of toxins and oxidants. It disturbed the redox balance, and the virus got an opportunity to spread. So let's talk a little bit about that mechanism as we think about what we could do to improve our health. So when we have an invasion of a virus or a toxin or anything bad in our cells, the first response to a toxin or a virus invasion is what's called an oxidative burst. There's a release of redox molecules called oxidants. And when they're released, the white blood cells in our body go, wow, there's a problem here. We better run over and find out what it is. They are called into action. So if we don't have those redox molecules to release because our mitochondria have not been producing them, because we've had an imbalance in our diet, an imbalance in our physiology in some way, or we simply are not producing them like we used to when we were young, then we don't have balance. There's no oxidative burst, no response. There's no signal to call in the white blood cells. White blood cells don't show up to gobble up the virus particles, and the virus will go unchecked. So what can we do? Well, we can supplement our body with redox molecules. There's a supplement you can drink. There's a supplement that you can put on your skin. And as you do this, you will add resources to your body. Then as you replenish redox molecules in a balanced formulation. You provide resources for your body to take care of this, even if your cells are not up to the job of producing them all on their own for various reasons. Let's say you're recovering from a serious illness or chemotherapy or something. You're not able, well, then you can supplement them and provide this resource to those cells so they can recognize a challenge, respond to it, and provide the kind of response that will check this virus. Because once that virus starts to get a head of steam, it takes over your body and you're in the bed. Now, fortunately, our immune system will usually finally get the message and we can fight it back. But for anybody who's had the flu, you know it's no fun. And, you know, in years past when I had the flu, I kind of wondered, you know, if I was 20 years older, I might die because I felt like I was dying. So, so anyway, I hope this has been helpful in helping you get a picture of what the flu is like, what we know about the science behind our cells and the way they respond and are susceptible to these viruses, and how redox molecules are really at the key of providing